Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. April 15th of 1991 started as an average day for 24-year-old Lisa Zeigert. She spent the first chunk of her day as a teacher's assistant at a middle school in Massachusetts. Then she worked in the afternoon at a local gift shop. Then she disappeared. The next morning, one of Lisa's card shop coworkers went to the store and became worried because of all the lights that were still on and Lisa's belongings were still in the store. Then family and friends grew even more concerned when Lisa failed to show up at her job at the middle school. Back at the card shop, detectives discovered signs of a struggle and a small amount of blood. Local, state, and national law enforcement officers searched the area for Lisa and eventually found her remains in a wooded area on April 19th of 1991. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. Police questioned who they believed could have been involved in Lisa's murder, but they came up empty-handed. In 1993, a woman named Joyce Schara told police that her ex-husband, Gary Schara, might have been involved in Lisa's abduction and killing, but police didn't arrest him yet. The case went cold for years, but the tides shifted in 2016 thanks to DNA technology called phenotyping. Phenotyping takes DNA and then creates a digital sketch of a person using information and predictors based on the sample, which was taken from Lisa's body. Once officials obtained the sketch, they created a narrowed down list of possible suspects. Detectives received permission to obtain DNA from the people on the list, including Gary Schara. On September 13th of 2017, a Massachusetts state police detective went to Gary's house, but he wasn't home. The next day, Gary's girlfriend went to the state police and said Gary had left her notes admitting that he sexually assaulted and killed a woman 25 years prior. The note reportedly said that he would be sent to jail for life if he gave them his DNA. Gary's car was found at a hospital in Stafford Springs, Connecticut on September 14th of 2017. He left a note on his windshield apologizing to the person who found his body and, quote, any psychological trauma incurred. He reportedly tried to kill himself by overdosing on pills, but he survived. On September 15th of 2017, detectives took Gary's toothbrush from his house and matched his DNA sample lifted from Lisa Zeigert's crime scene. He was arrested the next day. Gary was charged with murder, aggravated rape, and kidnapping. He initially pleaded not guilty, but in September of 2019, he reversed and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. Prosecutors dropped the kidnapping and the sexual assault charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Let's take a look back at the case of a 24-year-old woman who was abducted and killed while innocently doing her job.
Average siblings in an average family living a happy average life in that small town that nothing ever happens in.
Until one day, it does.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
It's a day that changes who you are forever.
And exactly what happened will destroy this tight-knit community's trust.
Maybe a friend of a friend of a friend who might have become fixated with her.
And leave them pointing fingers at one another.
Rumors about people who are close to us.
The truth won't come easily. Prosecutors are determined to unearth the evil in their midst.
We will solve this case, find the person who did this, and bring him to justice.
You're looking through the eyes of a monster, seeing exactly what he saw the night he entered this Agawam, Massachusetts gift shop with murder on his mind. But just 4 hours before he'll walk in, someone else will enter this store. Her name, Lisa Zeigert.
She was the second of our 4 children. Curly brown hair, big blue eyes, and a wonderful giggle that if you heard it, you had to laugh. The smallest. She was tiny. She was only 5'2". She was not a big person, but she was big inside, where it counted.
The 24-year-old is a teacher's assistant working with special education children. It's her passion, but it doesn't pay much. So like many teachers, Lisa gets a second job.
She started working in the gift shop. She worked there a couple of nights a week.
And on this night, as Crime Watch Daily first investigated, it's an average Wednesday for Lisa working behind the counter at Brittany's gift shop.
Her shift, which would start at 5 and usually end about 9 o'clock at night.
And like clockwork, one of Lisa's regulars stops in. It's her sister, Lynn.
I went into the card store, and it was a very slow evening for her. She was talking to me about what she wanted to do with her life, how she was feeling about, being an assistant teacher.
Lynn eventually takes off and leaves her sister to finish her shift.
A few people came in and out of the store. Not anything out of the ordinary.
Shortly after Lynn leaves, another customer stops by and makes a purchase, according to a receipt time-stamped 8:20 p.m. Then, not long after that, a final customer pops in right as the store is closing.
9 o'clock, this customer comes to the store. The store looks like it's still open. She comes in, she looks around. Nobody's coming to assist her, which she feels is odd because the store is open.
After looking around for a few minutes,
she thinks she hears some type of a noise in the back area of the store. She does not investigate it. She then leaves the store.
The next morning, a co-worker arrives to begin her morning shift at the same gift shop. She too finds the door open, lights on, and
she notices Lisa's car is still in the parking lot.
But when this employee enters the store, right away she's unnerved by what she sees lying right next to the cash register.
She notices Lisa's pocketbook. She notices Lisa's sets of key is still there.
But eerily, Lisa is nowhere to be found. Frantic, the co-worker calls 911. At the same time, Lisa's family is flooded by worried phone calls from Lisa's school, where she was a no-show that morning.
No one is prepared for that. There's no way that you wake up in the morning or you go to bed the night before and you say, I think tomorrow is going to be a day that's going to change my life.
The Zeigert family races to the gift shop and finds it cordoned off and surrounded by police. Detectives on the scene interview Lisa's family and co-workers.
She was a very responsible young lady. This isn't somebody that just went out and didn't check in with friends or anything like that. They knew relatively quick that this is a missing person case.
A true nightmare. A true nightmare. You keep hoping that, of course, that, it's just a mistake and she went someplace and with someone.
But as investigators search the store, they make a chilling discovery.
There's evidence at the card shop, at that scene, there is evidence of a struggle.
In the back room, as seen on this actual crime scene footage, what appears to be shoe markings on a door, and
there is a small amount of blood at the scene.
Right away, investigators believe Lisa Zeigert isn't only missing, she was taken.
Everything indicated that she did not leave the store on her own accord.
But where did this abductor take the 24-year-old school teacher? Multiple law enforcement agencies joined the search for Lisa, including the Agawam Police, Massachusetts State Police, and the FBI.
I mean, everybody wanted this to end well.
Then on Easter Sunday, and 4 days after the school teacher went missing, police get a call
from a resident indicating that he went for a walk with his dog in the woods and he believes he found some human remains.
They are the remains of a young woman who has been raped and stabbed. Shortly after the grisly find, a detective from the Agawam Police Department knocks on Dee Zeigert's front door.
He said, we found her. And I went, she's dead, isn't she? And he had tears in his eyes. And I don't remember. I remember kind of going to my knees. The worst day of my life.
24-year-old Massachusetts school teacher Lisa Zeigert is found raped and stabbed to death just 4 days after she was abducted. But who took Lisa and killed her has left the small New England town of Agawam shaken to its core.
It was the crime of the decade. Women being fearful, getting pistol permits, and because no one knew exactly what happened.
Cops on the case chased down every lead.
A lot, hundreds of interviews.
Then investigators get a lucky break when they're able to extract the killer's DNA from the crime scene.
We had the proverbial bloody fingerprint in this case, and we just needed to get that match.
The crux of the case is attaching an identity, that DNA, and we likely had an offender.
But detectives and even Lisa's own family take special note of the curious place where Lisa's body was discovered.
A rural area, no houses or anything like that around.
It's not a visible turnoff from the main road. In fact, it's a spot that someone would have to know in order to get there.
Always thought it was somebody who's very familiar with the area just based on where she was found.
It doesn't take long for the small town rumor mill to start spinning. And as the months pass, the talk on the streets turns into a full-fledged accusation. The finger pointing is squarely at one man.
Ed Brigatti was a friend of my sister's.
Friend or fatal foe? Ed attended high school with Lisa and even lived with Lisa's sister and boyfriend at the time she was murdered. Coincidence? Not according to the court of public opinion.
They decided for some reason that he was the person.
And there's something else. Not only were some residents claiming Ed killed Lisa, but that police were covering it up.
Because Ed's dad was a member of the police department.
But there's one huge problem with this theory. Ed has a rock-solid alibi.
I was working the restaurant that night.
In a Crime Watch Daily exclusive, Ed speaks out publicly for the first time since Lisa's murder.
I was working between my office and down on the floor, and my sister was there waitressing, so I was with my family and my friends that night, and there were plenty of witnesses to verify that.
And according to police, Ed's DNA does not match the sample taken at the crime scene.
It was never anything to hide.
Ed is one of my dearest friends. Ed had nothing to do with it.
Ed is immediately cleared by police, but without a suspect in custody, the vicious rumors keep swirling.
They wouldn't let it go.
My thought on the whole thing was just move ahead, just keep moving forward, and not worry about what people think, and you just know it's not true, and you just continue to just live your life.
And police continue with their investigation.
We just kept on getting samples from everyone that we could, and we just always hoped that at some point we would get a DNA hit.
But they don't get a hit. In fact, months, years, and even decades go by, 23 years to be exact, and there's still no DNA match.
When it first happens, I think everyone thinks, they watch the TV shows and, CSI and things like that, and in an hour, everything's going to get wrapped up. The person's going to be arrested, and everybody's going to know what happened. And as time goes on, you begin to understand how reality doesn't match that.
The case appears to be cold and on the fast track to frozen. The new DA, Anthony Gallooni, remembers the case. He was a young boy growing up in the area when the news first broke of Lisa's abduction and murder.
I was in my adolescence at the time. It's something that resonated and stuck with you and in some ways haunted the town of Agawam and the people who experienced it. This case means the world to a lot of people who developed a commitment to Lisa and developed a commitment to Lisa's family to tell them that we had the person who's responsible for their dear daughter's death.
Then just months into his administration, DA Gallooni gets wind of cutting-edge technology known as phenotyping. It's a process that takes a DNA sample and turns it into a digital composite sketch.
Today, I am releasing the snapshot composite sketches as developed by Parabon to the public. This forensic testing has predicted that Lisa's assailant has fair to very fair complexion with some freckling, hazel or brown eyes, and brown or black hair.
The Zeigert family is front and center for the unveiling.
We're so hopeful that this is going to bring for Lisa the justice that she so richly deserves.
I thought this is our chance. This is our biggest chance in probably 20 years to find the person who had killed her.
And when they look at the sketch of the man who apparently took Lisa's life,
it was very difficult when I first saw it, trying to think, do I know that person? Did I go to high school with them? Were we friends?
So cops have the killer's DNA and a composite of his face. Now they just need a name.
What's the face of a killer? It's hard to say, but his face is one.
We ended up looking back at persons who had been identified for one reason or another, and then sort of cross-referencing that with people who had refused to give their DNA voluntarily.
Then, prosecutors make an unprecedented move.
We went through a legal process that was devised by our team, led by myself and Captain Chris Wilcox. And through that legal process, we were attempting to compel a certain identified small list of individuals to provide their DNA.
Massachusetts State Police visit a handful of homes serving search warrants to collect DNA samples. One person on the list has been on their radar since the investigation began, but refused to give his DNA at the time. And when troopers knock on his door, the man is not home, but his roommate passes on the information.
With essentially a message that state troopers are looking for you.
Massachusetts schoolteacher Lisa Zeigert has been abducted and killed. For 25 years, investigators tracked down every lead and even used the latest technology to create a composite sketch of her killer. The composite narrows down their suspects, but when troopers attempt to collect DNA from their remaining persons of interest, one man appears to skip town.
And at that point, put him on our radar much more significantly.
Then the very next day, Massachusetts state troopers get a surprise visit.
Someone walked into a state police barracks and provided us with some information that was very compelling.
It's potentially explosive evidence in the form of letters. And the writer? None other than the man who is currently MIA.
I read the letters, and at that moment, I called the district attorney, Anthony Galloon, and we thought this might be our guy.
He purportedly hand wrote a series of notes that amounted to his confession and responsibility for the killing of Lisa Zeigert.
If true, police have a confessed killer on the loose, and they have no idea what else this seemingly desperate and dangerous man is capable of doing. Right away, cops issue an arrest warrant for their suspect and alert surrounding law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout. They also give a heads up to the Zeigert family that an arrest could be imminent.
The police really wanted to share with us, but they had to be very careful with what they shared. What we knew was this is the best lead we've had since the beginning of the investigation, and we're sorry we can't tell you more.
Hours later, the fugitive is spotted outside of Massachusetts, and police close in.
He was tracked down to Connecticut, where he had made some efforts to commit suicide.
The man is treated for a failed overdose attempt and arrested, awaiting extradition back to Massachusetts. Meanwhile, investigators get a search warrant and collect the suspect's DNA from items found at his home. The sample is sent out for comparison against the DNA of Lisa Zeigert's killer. And after years of waiting, it's just a matter of hours before the lab results come back.
I remember that moment very distinctly, and it was a very short email. I can remember seeing the word match underlined.
The next morning, the Zeigerts get a knock on their door, one for which they've been waiting a quarter of a century.
And it was the DA, the chief of police, oh my God, head of the detective bureau, and they sat us down and said, we got him. We got him. And it was like a cold wash going over you, and then a flush, and then a, really? Are you sure? Because over 25 and a half years, we've had lots of looking good.
Investigators explain they have a written confession and DNA match.
My immediate thought to myself was, wow, this is finally it.
It was literally unbelievable in that after that amount of time, you know, statistically, it was virtually impossible that this was ever going to happen. And then it did.
But exactly who is Lisa's alleged killer? The DA calls an urgent news conference to reveal once and for all the man's identity.
Today, I am informing the public that the search for Lisa's assailant is over. Last Friday, September 15th, an arrest warrant was issued from the Westfield District Court for Gary E. Schara, age 48, of West Springfield, Massachusetts, which charges him with the murder, aggravated rape, and kidnapping of Lisa Zeigert on April 15th, 1992.
It was probably one of the strangest moments I've had in my life. Looking at the face, a picture of the person who had done this to our Lisa.
After 25 years, being able to have a name and have a face to put with the anger that I had about my sister's killer, I was feeling like at least I had a focus now.
And it turns out the local residents' worst fears were realized.
He's been among us. He's been in the community.
The suspect grew up in the neighboring town of Longmeadow, only 5 miles from Lisa's hometown of Agawam.
He had been married and went through a divorce around the time or just before the murder. He has one child. That child is now adult.
And according to recent news reports, Gary's ex-wife, Joyce McDonald, told relatives at the time of Lisa's death that she thought her husband was involved. Sadly, no one took her seriously because she was battling alcoholism. And what about a likeness to the earlier composite?
I wasn't ready to see his twin, and I didn't. For me, it was more important with the picture to eliminate people as opposed to identify people.
But do they recognize the man who allegedly murdered Lisa?
I had never heard the name Gary Schara before the news conference. I had never heard of this person.
Lisa's friend, Ed Borgatti, who lived the past 2.5 decades under a cloud of suspicion, is also present at the press conference.
It's a feeling of incredible relief. A friend of mine summed it up perfect, and he said for 25 years, he said, you woke up 70% Ed Borgatti, and he said, and today you're 100%. And I appreciated that, and that summed it up.
Ed Borgatti is owed an apology by every person who slandered him and had a mean and horrible comment to say about him.
While the news conference is underway, Massachusetts State Police troopers pick up the suspect from Connecticut and begin extradition back to Massachusetts. And as they make their way across Route 5 South End Bridge connecting the two states,
There was a line of traffic, and there was bumper to bumper, and people in the community knew that we had him and we were bringing him back. As we're going through that traffic, people were literally putting their hands out the windows of their cars, fist pumping that. And so it felt good. That part of it felt very rewarding to all the troopers and the local officers that were involved in this.
There's a bit of excitement and joy about the prospect of this being something real. But there was a lot of caution, too, because there were some false alarms in the past over many, many years.
the news media gets wind of an arrest, and cameras are recording as a police escort arrives outside the Agawam police headquarters. It'll be the first time the community will get a glimpse of the man who terrorized their small town all those years ago. Then, the moment everyone has been waiting for.
Gary Schara.
Gary Schara enters the court to be charged with Lisa's murder.
On April 15th, 1992, in the town of Agawam, you did commit murder, aggravated rape, and kidnapping.
The Zeigert family is in court as he enters a plea of not guilty. It is the first time they have seen the man who stands accused of killing their Lisa.
I'm bordering between that angry and that that feeling that you're numb and you don't have any feeling.
But for the Zeigerts, this trial is not about the man who allegedly murdered their daughter. It's about justice for Lisa.
Your life will never be the same, but bringing the person to justice, at least that's something you can do for them.